Okay, hello everyone. How you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. Almost started on time. 3 minutes late. Sorry about that. Anyway, so we are once again staring down the abyss of World War III. Very funny how that seems to happen every now and then. We're seems like we've never really truly been out of danger over the you know, like for example, when the Cold War ended and there was sort of like this, um, I guess you could say, attitude that we sort of dodged a bullet. Kind of seems like that's expired. That's gone away, and we are very much, back on track for worldwide annihilation, right, folks? Feels like old times, I guess. So, anyway, what's going on here, right? Well, the things are about to get really bad in the Ukraine, and people are scared. We don't know what's going to happen, how it's going to turn out. So that's what today's stream is about. Trying to make. Did I just do something? Damn it! I didn't mean to do that. Trying to make some sense of what's actually going on over there. And in order to do that, I am going to give a very, 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 very condensed and brief sort of overview of recent events in the Ukraine so that it kind of puts it into perspective, right? Before we do that, let's look at what we're working on. Still not exactly feeling this. I think I like this side, the right side here more than the left side. So, although I like how that turned out, I think we're going to have to make this a little, we're going to have to make these match a little more, you know. But yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction. Let's work on this left side a little bit. Too bad. I actually do really like how this looks, but it's not happening. It's too asymmetrical. Asymmetrical. So, anyway, we'll continue on with this today. So, here's sort of a brief I guess summary of what's actually going on right now. The latest that I could hear in the Ukraine, right, as of this morning, late last night and this morning, there are currently about 190,000 Russian troops kind of surrounding the country on the, at least the eastern border of the country. Doesn't look good for the people in Ukraine there, right? Um, Hang on a second. Let me just switch to my other. I need to switch to a different brush because this brush is just not happening. Where's just the standard brush? Standard frickin'. There we go. Basic. Because I'm a basic bitch here. There we go. Yeah, just erase some of that. And we just need to make that kind of extend closer down. Okay. And where were we? Go back to the basic pencil kind of dude. All right. So anyway, yeah, 190,000 Russian troops hanging out there. There was a report of some troop withdrawal last week. Putin said that he withdrew around 7,000 troops. That turned out to be a lie. Um, we have to remember that Putin is ultimately an autocrat in all of this. He's a liar. He lies all the time. Putin is not a trustworthy individual at all, and you know, so any claim that you hear from him or anything that comes out of his government needs to be taken with not just a grain of salt, but like a truckload of salt, right? Um, Biden has said that based on current intelligence, he expects there to be an invasion within the next couple of days, if not, the next week, if not the next couple of days. He thinks that Putin has decided to invade, basically. Now, when you could say, like, well, when is it going to happen? Nobody can really say. And there is a big chance that it could still not happen. You know, that's kind of what we're all rooting for. We're all kind of hoping that, cooler heads prevail and a diplomatic solution can be found. You know, me personally, it kind of looks like the Russians want that, but I don't know. We'll speculate about that kind of thing later. As of this moment, though, these are the simple facts. The simple facts is they've got all the troops on the border, and every indication is that it looks like they're going to invade. So who knows? Still might not happen. We can't really say for sure until it actually does. But there's been reports of shelling going off. And both sides have said that the ceasefire has been violated, right? What ceasefire, you might be asking? It's a ceasefire that was put in according to what's called the Minsk Accords. We'll come to those a little bit later. But basically, there was sort of like a civil war going on in Ukraine between Russian-backed separatists and pro-government groups and the actual government troops as well. And there was sort of this peace accord that got hammered out, and now both sides are saying that the other side has violated this peace accord, right? This is kind of what Joe Biden said was going to happen. About 3 weeks ago, he came out and said that that Putin and the Russians were going to try to find some pretense to invade. He said that it would be a video, um, that a doctored video that would show basically Ukrainians attacking first, right? And that's kind of what it looks like is actually happening. We have this kindergarten attack, basically saying that you know this kindergarten was shelled and that kind of thing, and they're basically saying that's a false flag. Well, is it actually a false flag? I don't know. There's not enough information out there to say if it actually is a false flag or not, but it looks like it potentially could be. Luce the Hedgehog, thank you for joining. Danicat, thank you for joining too, man. Um, we'll talk about the military industrial complex, and all that. We'll talk about all that stuff later, right? So, so that's kind of where it's at right now. Right now, and then as of this morning, the president of the Ukraine, his name is Zelensky, Vladimir Zelensky, I think, has left the country and went to Germany in order to get support, right? Which never looks good, but at the same time, the president of a country never like usually leaves the country in time of war like that. So maybe that might be a sign that he feels confident enough leaving his country that it'll still be there when he gets back, or that it could be, I don't know, it could be either way. It could either be like maybe he's afraid and he's like leaving because he thinks that they're going to invade and like fucking kill him, right? Or he feels confident that the Russians won't invade in time for him to return. So it could be either way. You can't really read too much into these things, or it could just be exactly what he says, that he's just going to Germany in order to, rally support from European leaders, right? Um, I don't know. I personally think he wouldn't have left if he thought that they were on the brink of invasion, you know? Like, that doesn't seem like something, I mean, unless the guy's like calculating that, trying to save his own skin or some shit. So I don't know. We really can't say one way or the other if this is any indication of anything of like imminently about to happen, or if he had, I mean, we can only assume that the president of the Ukraine has more information about what's going on the ground than we do, right? So who knows, right? So how did this happen, right? What the hell is going on there? And why is everybody fighting over the Ukraine? Well, it's kind of a long story, a pretty long story, and it is not as simple as, Russians want to invade, right? Well, ultimately, let me rephrase that. Ultimately, that is kind of the motive, right? Ultimately, Putin and the Russians and Putin want to reestablish their former Soviet borders. That's what Putin's ultimate goal seems to be, right? I mean, who can really say what his really goal really is except for him? But it does kind of seem like, looking at all of the actions that Russia's engaged in over the last, 20 years or so, what have they done, right? They've had some invasion of Chechnya. How do you pronounce that shit? Chechnya. I don't know. You remember back in what was it like? I think it was 1999, somewhere around there. Chechnya, right? Basically, there were these apartment building bombings that went off, and this causes the Russians to invade, and that's what actually like led to Putin taking power. And then after that, we had Georgia, the invasion of Georgia, and then after that, we had the annexation of Crimea. And it really does seem that these kinds of crises are being used by the Russians in order to expand westward. And what's their ultimate goal? Is it to I mean, it seems like their ultimate goal is to just basically have hegemony over Europe, right? Sort of push back against NATO and, you know, increase their sphere of influence, right? And it really does, and that kind of seems to be one of the major motives for this show of force is that, the Ukraine was getting a little too chummy with the European Union and possibly joining NATO. Well, what is NATO actually there for, right? NATO is a defensive organization originally, although some would say that it's become more of a offensive organization, in the last couple decades or so. Jury's still out on that, but ultimately NATO was started as a defensive organization against the Soviet Union is what NATO started for, right? And it's, then after the Soviet Union collapses, it kind of didn't really have a reason to exist, but now it seems like it kind of has a reason to exist again because the former, Soviet Union, the Russian Federation now seems to be very aggressive over the last, 20 years or so, right, in Europe. So, and well, why would they want to join NATO, right? Because the United States is part of NATO. And if you're part of NATO, then the Russians won't invade you because that risks war with the United States and, the annihilation of mankind, right? And that's the other thing is it seems that so far, getting back to the present conflict, Biden is not committed to actually putting any troops here. He's sort of said that there will not be any American troops involved if there's an invasion, which is good, which means that, it most likely will not devolve into a nuclear war and kill everyone on Earth. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that won't happen. It doesn't mean that, anytime you have a war like this, there's always the chance of shit going wrong, something spilling over, the war spilling over, fucking, and the wrong people getting killed that sparks an international incident and can result in the war, a widening of the war. This is always a risk, and it's not a good thing to have war in Europe, at all. I mean, first off, just for the fucking people that live there who are going to die, right? But secondly, because it does have, the risk of destabilizing the region and spreading the war around and, could spark a world war. That's, anytime you have big major powers, nuclear armed powers squaring off against each other in close proximity to each other, shit can happen. Just say a fucking stray artillery round goes off, you know, lands in Poland and fucking kills somebody. right? Does that then like involve Poland in the war? Poland is part of NATO, right? Like, I mean, it could. So yeah, so shit can go wrong. I mean, yes, we probably don't have to worry about that happening, and to be frank, we probably don't even really have to worry about like, I mean, I don't know. Who can say? Who can say? Will this devolve into a huge, bloody, drawn-out conflict? Will it be over in a couple of days? We can't say what's going to happen one way or the other. The only thing that we do know that's going to happen is that people are going to die and it's going to suck and it's going to make the world a worse place and a more dangerous place and, you know, n- um, tick us up a notch on the death clock for mankind, right? Apparently, the Russians have fielded nuclear artillery, which is scary in and of themselves. Now, these artillery cannons, what they do is they launch small, like tactical nukes, which instead of like say, the 100 megaton, Tsar bombas or whatever that we see, like not something like that. These are artillery cannons that fire like a 1 kiloton nuke, you know, a range of like 5 or 10 miles or something like that, right? Um, which is still pretty freaking crazy. It's enough to, annihilate like I mean, that's 100 pounds of 100 tons of TNT, right? So this is nothing to like sneeze at, but it's sort of like those like bunker busters that the United States used in Afghanistan. That's kind of like the size that we're talking, right? Still not a good thing. Never a good thing to hear that a nuclear, munitions are going to be used or are on the field. That's scary as fuck. Even though that probably won't result in a worldwide nuclear war, still not a good idea. You know. Anyway, so yeah, let's dive a little bit back into what actually happened here. So a very brief history of the Ukraine over the last 20 years or so. We should go over that because in order to set the stage as to how did this happen, right? Because this just isn't like a situation that just appeared overnight. It wasn't like Putin just woke up one day and said, "I'm going to invade the Ukraine." No, it's kind of something that's been developing for, you know, like 2 decades at this point, right? So what happened is back in 2004, there was an election in the Ukraine, right? And it was a contested election, and the guy who won was named Viktor Yanukovych, right? He was the winner, and the elections were ultimately declared fraudulent by the Ukrainian Supreme Court, right? Basically, the elections were rigged, and they were rigged, and it was and it's strongly implied that the Russians were behind the rigging of this election, right? This guy Yanukovych was, for all intents and purposes, Putin's like puppet dictator like guy. you know, although he apparently didn't start out as a dictator, but we'll get into that a little bit here. But yeah, so essentially, the this guy steals the election, right? And there's an investigation, and it turns out that it was fraudulent. The Supreme Court in the Ukraine declares it fraudulent. And then what this does is that this creates this groundswell of support for the opposition candidate, whose name was Viktor Yushchenko, right? And this creates, there's lots of protests and stuff like that, right? Um, and this guy Yushchenko gets sick while all of this is happening. He gets sick, and it turns out that he was poisoned with what's called a TCDD dioxin poison, right? And if you see pictures of this guy Yushchenko, you'll see his face. It's like filled with little pock marks all over it, and that comes from this type of poison, which is something that apparently, Russian intelligence likes to use in order to assassinate people, right? Um, the dinner at which he was poisoned at, three of the men who were at the dinner with him are now currently in Russia, like kind of beyond any reproach. So it's like, yeah, Putin tried to have this guy killed, right? Um, but it didn't work. He recovers, and this is what leads to what's called the Orange Revolution, right? And that's what the name of all these protests were. Some of these protests were huge, 500,000 people or more, right? Protesting around the country. Um, and the opposition, of course, to these protests were backed by the government and Putin, right? Who was sending aid to this guy Yanukovych, who was the president, right? The guy that Yanukovych is the stolen puppet president guy. Putin was basically telling him to crack down and was threatening to withhold aid from him if he didn't crack down harder. So that's what, so yeah, basically like telling them use more violence, because eventually it deteriorates and the police in Ukraine start using live rounds and stuff like that, basically shooting protesters, that kind of thing. Right. And Putin is telling him, kill more of them, use more, crack down harder, or we're taking away your the aid that we're giving you. Sean Nilabud, hey, thanks for joining, man. I will read all these comments. I think let's see. We'll take a break at 12 and we'll read some of the comments here. So that's yeah, that's pretty crazy shit, right? To be fair, the Orange Revolution was backed by elements within the United States and just the West in general, right? Including the State Department, some groups that George Soros's like group. I don't have the name of it, but he has like a sort of an NGO that goes around and tries to promote, democracy and shit like that, right? This time it's not a conspiracy. It's actually true. George Soros actually did back the protesters. But that's a good thing. I mean, they were trying to enact democracy and shit, right? So good for George Soros. Right. Um, but anyway, yeah, so according to the New York Times, yeah, there was not only a Russian intelligence agency that was backing Yanukovych, um, they also had troops ready to go. Apparently, there was one of these rather larger protests where they had something like 10,000 Russian troops ready to intervene and slaughter the protesters. And it didn't happen because of uh, there was basically the president there just kind of like put the kibosh on that. So yeah, there were, although there was also people who were shot and murdered and shit. So it's like could have been a lot worse, right? But, anyway, so this orange revolution results in a revote in 2000, a revote in which Yanukovych is elected president, right? Um, and things kind of continue on for a little while, right? There's like some sort of like separatist movements and stuff start forming right in the east. Um, so roughly 17% of the Ukraine's population um, they have like a Russian background, right? Like ethnically and linguistically, they speak Russian as their primary language, stuff like that. And So during the next 5 or 6 years or so, these separatist movements start popping up in the East. And it's like, well, these are sort of like Russian separatist movements which are being funded by the Kremlin, right? Funded by Putin in order to, destabilize the region, right? And 2010, there's another election, and Yanukovych is elected president again. Um, so basically, he wins legitimately this time. It doesn't seem like the 2010 election was rigged in any way, right? But who knows? So, anyway, and at this time there were negotiations for the Ukraine to enter the European Union. And Yukановich, remember Yukановich is, or yeah, am I pronouncing that right? Yanukovych, not Yukановich. Yanukovych is, he's Putin's man, right? He's Putin's basically puppet dude. So he ends these negotiations, pulls out of the negotiations with the EU, and decides that he's going to join the EAEU, which is the um, Eurasian Economic Union. Essentially, the EAEU is Russia's version of the EU. It's an Eastern economic trading bloc, essentially, right? Made up of former Soviet republics. So Russia, Belarus. Is that how you pronounce that? I can never fucking pronounce these countries, dude. I'm sorry. I'm I'm an American. I'm a product of the American educational system. We don't know shit. So Kazakhstan, Belarus, and Russia, and also as observers, Cuba, Moldova, and Uzbekistan. So yeah, it's essentially just a right or a trading bloc made up of former Soviet republics, right? So he options to join that instead. So this results in protests again because people want to join the EU. And there could be many reasons why. First off, the economic benefits of joining the EU are immense. Getting the euro as your currency and stuff like that, free travel between countries, trading benefits, shit like that, right? So just that alone, the potential to make, for the economy to just go up like crazy is the first thing that people want to. Secondly, there's a big movement in the Ukraine at the time that identified with West. They wanted to identify more with Western Europe, for one reason or another, right? Whether it was like, ideally or what. I mean, imagine you live in a former Soviet country. There's a big movement to kind of break with the past and join the West, right? Not be considered one of these former Soviet, kind of backwards countries anymore, right? Well, this also results in, these separatist movements on the east kind of going into hyperdrive, which results in like sectarian violence and shit like that, you know. Um, because the people in the East are more pro-Russian, they identify more with Russia. They speak Russian as their first, primary language, stuff like that. So that's one thing. They're like ethnically Russian and, et cetera, et cetera. But, the other thing, there's also a lot of people basically being paid by Russia in order to destabilize, destabilize the Ukraine because Russia has their sights set on them, you know. And the thing about it is this, it's like, well, just because they, maybe Putin or his larger plan is to, you know, reestablish his borders, former Soviet borders, that doesn't mean that he's going to invade every country that is like, formerly a Soviet republic, right? You know, it's more of like, well, he wants them to be Russia's ally. right? And not, become an enemy, not join NATO, right? Not join the EU, not be in oppression or opposition, not oppression, not to be in opposition of Russia is what his ultimate goal is. So there really is. I mean, so it's not like he's going to invade like all of these other former Soviet countries, like not really. It's more of like, can he extend the Russian sphere of influence over that country, right? And, your country joining the EU or joining NATO kind of removes that ability. So this is kind of why he's got designs, he doesn't want that. He doesn't want the Ukraine to join the West. He doesn't want the Ukraine to join these two organizations because then they kind of become beyond his reach. And then he has to negotiate with them in a different way. Whereas if they're not part of these organizations, he can strong arm them. He can basically threaten to invade, shit like that, right? But can't invade a NATO country because then, you know, NATO and the United States gets involved, and that kind of puts a kibosh on that. So when you look at it through that lens of extending the Russian sphere of influence, you know, and hegemony over Western Europe, it makes sense, right? It would be sort of like if, let's say Mexico, right, wanted to join, like, you know, I don't know, Mexico wanted to join, say, the Pacific Transatlantic Partnership, and the United States wasn't a member. Same kind of thing. Maybe we wouldn't invade Mexico, but we'd be doing everything we can to say, hey, Mexico, don't join them, join us, because you're a huge trading partner with us and blah, 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 blah. See what I mean? So it's, maybe that's not the best comparison, but you get the idea, right? Um, anyway, so this results in more civil unrest, right? Because we already had sort of this fractionalization going even back then in 2014, 2015, and it sort of results in not just, I mean, yeah, protests and stuff like that, but also essentially a civil war. You know, we had like armed paramilitary groups fighting each other. You know, um, stuff like that. And so we had, so you have like groups that are aligned more with Russia that are supported by Putin and Russian intelligence or being armed by Russia. And then you also had groups that were armed by the other side, right? Um, and riots, stuff like that, you know, um, very bad things, riots and like open warfare in the streets, shit like that. And so in 2014, this guy Yakovlevich, he passes a bunch of laws in order to crack down really hard on protesters and on these anti-government paramilitary groups, right? I guess at this point is it was just sort of just starting. It wasn't like straight up civil war just yet, but pretty much getting there, right? And these laws were pretty freaking bad. Um, so I have them listed out here, right? Let's see. So first, one of these first laws, there's a whole bunch of them here. This might take a little while. Excuse me. First thing is criminalizing extremist activity, right? Which the problem with when the thing is that it didn't really define what extremist activity is, right? And whenever you see laws like that are just like very broadly defined, kind of, you know, laws like this, what they are, they're designed for the government to basically arrest you for any reason whatsoever. So you have a small protest, whatever, they don't like it, they can arrest you and say this is extremist activity. You're handing out pamphlets or something that's totally peaceful, and whatever your pamphlet seems to criticize the government in ways they don't like, that's extremist activity, right? So they can basically, a law like that doesn't actually define what extremist activity is or the conditions under what you are and aren't allowed to gather and that kind of thing. That basically is something designed to put the kibosh on freedom of assembly, so that they can shut down any protest anytime they want. They could throw anyone in jail for anything they want. All they have to do is declare what you said to be extremist activity, you know. So that was the first thing. They have in Ukraine and also lots of countries something called parliamentary immunity. And what that is, we have a form of this as well in the United States when it comes to, say, the president. Like in the United States, like the Department of Justice will not indict a sitting president, right? There's no actual law that says that this is the case. There's no law that says a president cannot be indicted. This is just a kind of tradition. It's a interpretation of court rulings essentially, which, is most likely bullshit. Same kind of thing, except they actually have laws against it. They have laws saying that you can't arrest, someone who's a member of parliament, right? Why do they have that? Because places like, former Soviet republics have a history of coups and violent turnovers, right? Maybe not so much, Ukraine until recently, but this happens all the time in these kinds of countries, right? So what happens is that when someone takes over, first thing they do is they arrest everyone in parliament and throw them in jail for BS charges, whether or not they actually committed any crimes or not. So this is why they had this immunity, so that, it's against the law at least to just try to fucking arrest your political opposition, right? So he kind of made that a lot easier to get rid of, right? So that he can basically just arrest anyone in parliament anytime he felt like it. Another one, let's see. So he extended and applied amnesty from prosecution um, to those who have committed crimes against protesters. So, bunch of police go, they find some peaceful protesters, they blow them away using live rounds or whatever, and he basically just said, "Hey, that's a-okay. You know, these cops are heroes." Right? And so yeah, that's kind of bullshit. They started trying people in absentia, right? So that's generally not, a good thing when you're putting people on trial for when they're not even present to defend themselves and then declaring them guilty, you know. That's kind of a dictator move right there, you know. What's really disturbing is we do the same thing in the United States when it comes to things like terrorists and stuff like that, you know. Um, there was a guy, I can't remember his name, but he was an American citizen who was drone striked, he was an American citizen who was part of ISIS. Can't remember his name exactly, but basically was tried in absentia, and then the Obama administration killed him during a drone strike. And then a few years later, Donald Trump launches a drone strike and kills his 16-year-old son. Can't remember his name, but that guy was tried in absentia. So yeah, this is something that happens in all over the place, and it's usually not a very good thing. You know, you shouldn't be able to. A government shouldn't be able to just have a trial for someone that is not there to defend themselves and then just declare them a criminal. That kind of sounds like bullshit, right? Especially when it comes to something like, say, an extrajudicial killing, like, you know, drone striking an American citizen who's in another country. Anyway, so yeah, that shit was happening. What else? We had one for creating a penalty for blocking access to residential buildings of up to 6 years in jail. So, not just blocking a government building, which you would expect that to be against the law, right? Because that is a protest, a very common sort of technique, protest tactic, right? people do a sit-in or some shit, or they chain themselves to the doors of the Capitol building or something in order to do their protest. It's a very common nonviolent protest kind of tactic, right? But according to this law, you could go to jail for 6 years for that, for just basically sitting in front of a doorway. And it's not like somebody can't walk around you, right? So yeah, this is kind of dictator shit, right? And not good at all, right? Couple more. What else we got? Drivers of motorcades of more than 5 cars, if they cause traffic jams, face the loss of their driver's license and vehicle for up to 2 years. So, Canadian trucker convoy, all of you guys just lost your driver's licenses and your vehicles. All your vehicles impounded, all of your driver's licenses gone, not allowed to drive for 2 years. That's what was going on in the Ukraine. Right. Let's see. Gathering and disseminating information about judges, the Berkut. I'm not sure what the Berkut was. Or their respective families carries a penalty of 2 years in jail. So, doxing people, essentially, throws you in jail, which that actually is not that bad of a thing. But 2 years? I don't know, man. Doxing people is bad. Usually we just sort of like kick people off of social media for that. I don't know, 2 years though. I mean, you could do that shit by accident. In fact, my friend Raph doxed me by accident once. Basically told people where I lived and shit during a live stream. It's like, whoa, dude, what are you doing? It could happen by accident, right? Just saying though. But sounds a little draconian, right? Let's see. How are we looking? Yeah, that looks a lot better. It's still not as even, but you know what? I think we can work with this, right? I might go in and Photoshop this later and kind of drag it down a little. But yeah, let's do this. Let's continue on with this for now. I think we're looking good. We need to draw this this shoulder up a little more though. Let's see. Where were we? Where were we? We were at okay, here we go. This one's really fucked up. Defamation. Right. Defamation, either by means of press or social media, carries a penalty of up to 1 year in jail. What the fuck does that even mean? Talking shit about somebody, right, on the internet can get you thrown in jail. So, making a YouTube video that says something they don't like, tweeting the wrong thing, making a post on Facebook that was like anti-government gets you thrown in jail for up to a year. That's some draconian shit right there. That's straight up like, that's fucking, I don't see how anybody can defend that, right? I mean, one of the things that we very, very cherish here in the West is freedom of speech, right? That's what not having your freedom of speech looks like. You often get like conservatives and Nazis and shit complaining about getting kicked off of Twitter or Facebook or something and saying, "Oh, you're violating my freedom of speech," blah 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 blah. This is what an actual violation of freedom of speech looks like. Getting thrown in jail for a year for tweeting that the president sucks. Can you possibly imagine that something like that even happening here? There wouldn't be enough jails, number one, in order to institute something like that in the United States, right? And that just kind of goes to show, like, how hard they cracked down on this stuff, right? Like, you know, some people on the left kind of look at this as sort of like all of this as like an expansion of Western imperialism, you know, because it was true that the protesters and stuff were backed by the United States and other Western countries, right? But when your president is doing shit like throwing people in jail for crap they said on the internet, for Facebook posts, for tweets, for speaking their mind, as everyone in the world should have a right to do, but don't, you know? but doesn't, but they all should. Like, when your president is throwing you in jail for that, it's like maybe his ass deserves to be fucking like, deposed, right? Maybe I don't know. It makes it kind of hard to support someone like this, even if they were democratically elected. At that point, when you're throwing people in jail for gathering, when you're taking away their cars, you know, for driving and with, for driving in more than 5 cars, like when you're doing shit like that, when you're fucking like breaking up protests, using live ammunition to fucking kill people with, you know, and like throwing people in jail for shit they say on the internet, it's like you are now a dictator. You're no longer a legitimate president. And I don't give a fuck if you're the most like progressive liberal person there is. Your ass needs to be fucking removed, right? Doesn't matter, dude. There's a few more here. Let's see. Law enforcement officials involved in similar activities and their families face a maximum prison term of 6 months. So cops get a lighter sentence. Everybody else goes to jail for 2 years. If you're a cop and you talk shit about the government, you get 6 months. I don't know why. You would think that they would want to crack down harder on a policeman or something who was anti-government, but oh well. I guess that's probably because they don't want to lose the support of the police. You know, now that I think about it. Still kind of fucked up though, you know. Let's see. The penalty for blocking government buildings is up to 5 years in jail. That for blocking an entrance to a residence is 3 years, a restriction of liberty. Right. So, yeah, bad stuff. 15 days in jail for unauthorized installation of tents, stages, or sound equipment. So you go have a protest, right? You put up a stage in order to have some speakers to talk to people, that kind of thing. 15 days in jail for that. Nope, you didn't get authorization. The government does not approve of your gathering. You're going to prison. You're going to jail. Yeah, that's you couldn't be more anti-free speech if you tried. Remember the First Amendment here that we have in the United States. Be happy that you have it. Be happy that we have our highest law says you have the ability to gather peacefully. You have the ability to say what you want, right? And the government is not allowed to do shit to stop you. Because lots of places on earth don't have that. This is what it looks like when they try to take it away, right? What else? What else? An anti-mask law. That is actually doubly crazy, considering nowadays, this is 5 years before the pandemic hit. So, but still, an anti-mask law that you're not allowed to wear a mask in public, basically so that you can't cover your face, so they can take pictures of you, so that way they can go through the footage and see if you who you are and go arrest your ass later. So even just taking, that basically means just even taking place at a protest carries a risk that you're not allowed to you're not allowed to hide yourself in any way, which is also total fucking bullshit, right? What else here? Let me see. Paint layer. There we go. Oh wait, is this erasing? No, no, no. All right. So what I want to do is no. Okay. What am I doing? I want to do that. No, it's erasing. I want to I want to go to color, get my eyedropper, get that color, go back to this. There we go. Okay. See, I'm learning the program here, man. What else? Mandatory licensing of internet providers. Well, okay. I don't see why they weren't licensed to begin with, but all right. Let's see. Provisions for legal governmental internet censorship and a broad definition of extremist activities which disallows non-governmental organizations and churches from support of civil protests. So not only can you like not go to a protest, but even if your organization supports a protest, which I'm assuming through trying to organize it or something like that, that can land you in jail as well. So pretty draconian stuff there. This is straight up like 1984 kind of dictator Saddam Hussein shit, right? And these are the crackdown measures that were undertaken, right? So suffice to say, this didn't work. Didn't work at all, because people do not like it when you try to take away their rights, when you try to use state power in order to force them to stay quiet, especially after your ass, like, already tried to steal an election once, right, in the past, and are clearly like the puppet of a fucking foreign power. So this just sort of these measures, they often do have the exact opposite effect of what they're intended. You know, this is actually kind of something we saw during the BLM protest. Just as an aside, the harder the government would crack down in, say, Portland or something like that, like they would do things like send out riot cops. Trump was doing things like sending out like he was sending out like federal officers who didn't have name tags and were not in uniform, who were just driving up and just grabbing people off the street and arresting them, not reading them their rights, shit like that. Like, let's not forget that shit happened in this country, right? But one thing that you saw every time they would do shit like this, every time they would do these sort of draconian kind of like, authoritarian measures in order to squash protests, is that the protests would just get stronger and stronger, right? And as soon as the government went away, the protests would stop. That's just kind of what happens when you challenge people, they fight back. And so so these measures in the Ukraine didn't work, and it just got worse. And it just got worse. The protests got bigger, bigger, shit like that. And this results in, by February of 2014, Yakonovich is forced to negotiate with the opposition. Hang on, I need my notes here. He is, where did I just lost myself here. There we go. He's forced to negotiate with the opposition leaders in order to restore powers to parliament and have new elections by December of that year, right? But that didn't work because Parliament then votes to remove his ass from office because, it's a fucking dictator, right? And the thing is that they do this on February 22nd. February 21st, Yakonovich flees the country, right? In the middle of the night, kind of packs up and bails, goes to a couple of different places. Apparently he went to this one government like owned agency, of God, they were like some kind of like shipping company or some shit like that, and tried to pass it off like it was an inspection. And the guy who owned it, like it was a state run industry, like I think was it like it was like a shipping thing, something like that. Basically shows up at this guy's warehouse, says, "Hey, I'm here to inspect the fucking warehouses." And the dude who ran it was like, this is bullshit. What are you doing here?" Right? And within a couple of days, Yukановich is in Russia and basically fled the country, went to Russia. He claims that he was being chased out, that there was violence and stuff like that, and that is his car, like, caravan, like people were shooting machine guns at him and throwing grenades at him and shit, right? Doesn't change the fact that he flees to another country and he is still in Russia to this day. Um, he also apparently emptied the treasury on his way out because a month after going to Russia, Yukановich buys a $52 million mansion. Right. So don't worry about this guy. He's living high on the hog, you know. Apparently, also, he was given Russian citizenship by Putin's decree. So apparently Putin can just decree shit and it's true, you know. So he's he's not really a president anymore. He's more of a king at this point. He could just say shit and they have to do it. So yeah, that results in, let's see, where were we? Right. They hold elections in May and a guy named Peter Poroshenko becomes the president, right? And this sets the stage for Russia invading and annexing Crimea in 2014, right? So basically, there were still these, although they, so what happens is that this guy Poroshenko, what he does is that he negotiates a ceasefire, right? This is that ceasefire that they're talking about that has been you know violated. The Minsk Accords, right? And basically gets all the people together, gets them all to all stop fighting, right? And or wait a minute, or did the Russians invade annex Crimea first before that happened? Wait a second, hang on a second. Yeah, okay, actually no, I had that wrong. The Russians actually invade and seize Crimea. So Crimea is sort of like on the eastern end of the Ukraine, and has access to the Black Sea, shit like that. And in 2014, the Russians use a naval base that they have there on, I guess the place is called Sevastopol, right? I can never pronounce this shit. I can, very, very bad at reading in general, but also reading these names. Sevastopol, right? Anyway, they have a naval base there, and they kind of use this naval base in order to stage an invasion of Crimea and are very quickly able to disarm the local Ukrainian military and police in this area and essentially just annex it for their own, So annexing a country is an area is just basically taking it, saying this is ours now. This belongs to us, right? Not usually a thing that countries do very often nowadays. We didn't really see this kind of shit happening. I mean, this really does very much remind me of the run up to World War II, where, not meaning to compare Putin to Hitler, but if you remember in the run up to World War II, the Nazis in Germany, would go around various places in Europe and just annex this and that. They would take the Rhineland from France or whatever. They would annex fucking Austria, right? Like, you know, basically just taking this country and it belongs to us. And it really does seem like Putin is engaging in that exact same behavior. Expansionist policies and invading places like Chechnya. God damn it, I could never pronounce that. Chechnya. You know, invading Georgia, stuff like that, annexing parts of other countries. Very much does seem like he's on the warpath. He is at least he is the aggressor here. Let's not forget who actually is the aggressor in all this. It's fucking Vladimir Putin, right? There does seem to be some segment on the left who likes to defend Putin for some reason. I never figure out why. Vladimir Putin is not a leftist in any way. He's not progressive in any way. He's very much an authoritarian, and he's very much very right wing as well. We can't forget, I mean, the Russia is it kind of has a fucking right wing government, right wing authoritarian government. Anyway, that's another subject. So yeah, that's some bad shit, right? They annex it, they basically take it over, and then they have a referendum where apparently 97% of the people who live in Crimea vote to join the Russian Federation. But it's an election kind of like, this referendum is sort of like an election that they have in North Korea. You know what I mean? It's like, it's basically there for show, right? Like, it didn't really matter what the fucking people said. And anybody who thinks that they had a fair referendum, it's like, yeah, okay. I got some fucking NFTs I want to sell you, right? Like, I got a bridge and some stock and some furry trout farms that I want to sell you, right? There's no possible fucking reality where like 97% of the people who lived in this area actually like wanted to fucking join the Russians. Bullshit, you know. I don't know. I don't believe that shit for a nanosecond is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, um 12 o'clock. We're actually making pretty good time. I've got maybe about 75% of the way through, so we might actually end a little early today. But let's read some comments. Okay, because we are at 12. I see that we have some spam in the chat. Let's just remove that. Lose a Hedgehog, by the way, you are a moderator. So feel free if you see anybody spamming stuff, you can totally remove it. Let's see, what do we got here? Reading some comments. Dynacat loves me. What's happening? Big markets for our military industrial complex is being made. That's what's happening. Yes. Yes, that is, of course, one of the things that we're hearing, from people on the left and the right and all places in between is that this is another opportunity for us to sell some guns and bombs, which is true. It's definitely true. And, apparently the United States has been supporting the opposition in the Ukraine for years at this point, right? So there is some truth to that. Um, you know, it might be a good thing, is what I'm saying, though. It's good, I think, to oppose, Russian expansion in Europe, right? I mean, the thing is, here's the thing: if somebody actually does want to join Russia, and that's like fair and all that shit, it's like okay, join, but you can always just fucking move there. Like, what's with like him taking over other people's countries? I don't know. That doesn't seem right to me. But yes, yes, there is definitely a lot of arms sales going on, you know, and with any war, there's always going to be profits. There's always going to be people profiting off of the war, which is, you know, unfortunately just a fact of life. I mean, how do we stop this? I guess we can, I don't know, what, pass laws against it, right? I mean, it's like an arms dealer. That's what these are. Like, we have to kind of do something about this, I guess. The fact that our economy is propped up through the sales of weapons. I mean, and it has been for quite a while now. You know, that's one of the things that the United States still makes that it actually knows how to make are weapons of war. This is just unfortunately the truth. So, how do we stop that? I don't have an answer for that. I don't know how we move our economy away from manufacturing, you know, guns and bombs, and I don't have an answer to that. Nationalize these industries, maybe. I don't know. Um, promote democracy and peace. Promote peace throughout the rest of the world. Dry up the markets for the guns and bombs. But unfortunately, it seems like it's just always going to be there. There's always going to be a war someplace. There's always going to be people who want to kill people. And I mean, that doesn't mean you give up, but you still do everything you can to address the problem, you know. So do not have an answer for that. Sorry. Lewis the Hedgehog. Putin has troops in Belarus and claims that they are there for military exercises that will end tomorrow. What a coincidence. That's the same date as the 2022 Olympics ends. Didn't think about that. Huh. Yeah, maybe. I mean, do you think he's competing with the Olympics for airtime? I don't know. You're maybe using the Olympics as a cover. Like people will be paying attention to that, and then that way he can invade and no one will notice, or he can get in like a strategic advantage if he invades during the closing ceremonies or something. I don't know. I mean, does seem like that's more than a coincidence, though. Yeah. Okay, during the days of Stalin, things in Ukraine were so bad that when the Nazis invaded them, they thought they were being liberated, but by the time they learned that they were no better, it was too late. Um, I wouldn't doubt that. I don't really know the World War II history of this area, you know. Um, from what I understand, they were just sort of like they were not industrialized at that point. So, but I really don't know. I mean, were they like the victims of famines and shit like that? I'll have to look that up. So that's the thing with history, man. There's always just so much of it. Right? And that's the cool thing about history too, is that there's always new things to learn and discover, right? So, you know, to be honest, I mean, when was the last time anybody cared about the Ukraine? I mean, that's not a thing that usually pops up very much for us Americans. You know what I mean? So, maybe this is shit that we should know about. I don't know. I mean, you know, it's another thing to study, I guess. What else? Put it loose a hedgehog, but to this day, not everyone there has learned their lessons, so be careful. There are still some alt-right groups in Ukraine also. Yes, and we are getting close to that. We're going to talk about neo-Nazis in the Ukraine here in a minute. Sean Nilabud. Every single year, the Russians have military exercises in Belarus with the Belarusian military. Belarusian military. Everyone knows this. The U.S. has been trying to pretend that this is an invasion buildup. So you don't think that there's a risk of an invasion? I mean, it seems like there was some shelling the other day. That's the only thing, because I've seen that angle too, right? Where people are saying that this is no big deal. Um, like apparently the president of the Ukraine was trying for a long time to try to get people to like calm down and say, don't say it's an invasion. It's not an invasion. You're ruining the economy, shit like that. And I could understand that, Um, but I don't know, man. Apparently, there's been reports of violence, though, right? And I mean, is it really just like all bullshit? I mean, maybe. That's kind of what I thought. See, that's the thing. Like, I even remember I said this last week, right? I thought that this was just more of like blustering for Putin to like, you know, use as a negotiating tactic. You know what I mean? In order, because he doesn't want like the Ukraine to join NATO, and he doesn't want them to join the EU, that kind of thing. And so that's what I thought. I thought this was all just like, a show of force, right? And that it wouldn't escalate. But I don't know, from what I'm seeing in the news, it looks like it's starting to escalate. So is it really? I mean, is it really just all like a big, ploy? I hope so. I hope you're right. I hope that this is all just like, a negotiating ploy and that there actually isn't like any actual real threat of war. I mean, that would be the best case scenario, right? So, I don't know, man. Let's all root for that, you know. Hopefully. Um Louis the Hedgehog, I think Berkut means golden eagle. Okay, is that like the name of? I'd have to look that up. I don't know. I mean, Berkut, is that like like the name of their military or something, or like I'll have to look up what that means as far like the context of what that means for what we're talking about, right? Louis the Hedgehog, my late grandmother is from one of those places Hitler annexed. Yes, yes. Let's see. I'm saying he's waiting until after the Olympics to invade, just like in 2014 with Crimea. Oh, really? That's what happened in 20. Oh, wow. See, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. This is why you guys are awesome, because you like, you know shit that I don't know. I didn't know that in 2014 he waited until after the Olympics were over before he invaded Crimea. That's good information, and makes it a little more scary then, right? Wow, fuck. Let's hope that they don't actually pull the trigger on this, right? Lewis. However, as bad as Putin and Ping is, they're nowhere near as bad as Stalin and Mao. Yeah, yes, absolutely 100% true. You know, they've not engaged in any genocides as of yet. So, still, you don't want to be playing. It's kind of like playing with fire, the way I look at it. It seems like he's like Putin in particular is just like flexing his muscles, you know, because he's figured out that no one's going to stand up to him. And it seems like he's pushing it just as far as he can. And that's sort of what bullies do. I mean, I know this is grossly oversimplifying the situation, but this is something bullies do. They push it and they push it and they push it and they figure out exactly how far they push it. They figure out exactly how far they can bend the rules until too far as far, And I don't think that Putin's an idiot. I think he's like strategically brilliant. You know, Definitely knows what the fuck he's doing when it comes to like undermining other people's countries and shit like that. So I think if he were to see a big enough pushback, he'd probably back down. But do you want to take that risk though? You know what I mean? Do you really want to risk war with a nuclear armed power in order to push back? Like, I don't know. It's kind of a no-win situation for the Ukraine at least. I mean, the Ukraine's kind of screwed if you think about it. They basically don't really have much of a recourse. They can't really do anything militarily against Russia. If Russia rolls in there, they're not going to be able to stop them. You know, like the best case scenario for the Ukraine as far as militarily goes is to kind of turn this into like another sort of Afghanistan Vietnam situation where where the cost is too much, and that means that they're going to have to basically fucking like create an insurgency, right? And that means that unfortunately thousands of people are going to end up dying either way, because they have to create an insurgency. That means that the populace is going to get cracked down upon, right? And it's going to be bad, and people's rights are going to get violated, and entire families are going to get wiped out, and that's what's going to fucking happen. So it's like not going to be a good time, if the Russians invade. There's like no scenario where they just roll in, win, and then everything, they roll in, they win, they take Ukraine and annex it, and it becomes a province of Russia, and then that's it. The end. Everything goes back to normal. There really is not. I mean, the chances of that happening are extremely low, and it's more like it would turn into some kind of protracted, like, insurgency kind of thing. And, you know, the result of that is that thousands of people are going to end up dying over the next, couple of decades. So let's hope that doesn't happen either. I don't know, man. I mean, it's doesn't look very good. If you live in that area, I would recommend leaving, making preparations to find, some safe place to go to. Maybe move to a different part of the country that's not in the line of fire, and then think about, I don't know, think about what happens when like fucking the tanks roll through your streets. Are you gonna stay? Are you gonna become a refugee? I mean, there's already reports also another thing in the east of evacuations. There's videos of sirens and shit going off. And the pro-Russian separatists are basically telling people to evacuate, because shit's about to go down. So I don't know. I hope it's all bluster, man. Anyway, thanks, Lewis, for joining, man. Really appreciate it. Take it easy, man. All right. 12:18. We got a little bit more to go, and then we'll call it a day. So, the subject of Let's see, where were we? The subject of these militias has popped up, right? And this is what happens after Crimea is invaded and annexed, right? The Crimea is annexed into Russia, and they have this fake referendum, right? And basically, like, take that part of the country, right? It belongs to Russia now. So this sort of results in more civil unrest, and then also these separatist movements that are backed by Russia kind of go into overdrive after this, right? And you know, it gets pretty fucking crazy, right? So let's see, where were we? So there's basically, yeah, these separatist movements. They take the form of essentially pro-Russian militias, is what they are, right? Kind of like you know, armed paramilitary groups that are going around doing things like taking over government buildings, shooting police officers, shit like that. Right. And it doesn't take long for these groups to start fighting with each other. So, it's sort of like we said, a civil war at this point kind of breaks out. Although it's not really a civil war like, you know, one huge opposition army against the government. It's more like lots of small individual terror cells fighting against the government and then also fighting against each other, right? And we had a couple of bigger ones. There is one called the Sparta Battalion, led by a Russian national named Arsen Sergeyevich. Sergeyevich. I can seriously not pronounce this shit to save my life. This is what his name is, Sergeyevich. Let me paste this down for you guys here. Right? No fucking clue how to pronounce Sergeyevich. Anyway, I'm just gonna call him Arson. Right? His nickname is Motorola, so let's call him Motorola. The reason that he had a nickname of Motorola is because in the Russian army, he was a communications officer and he would use Motorola equipment, cell phones and boosters and shit like that. Right. So anyway, he leads this Sparta battalion, right? And Motorola, there's a recording of him that came out in the New York Times of him talking about torturing and murdering 15 prisoners of war. So this was not a nice thing, not a nice conflict that these guys are engaged in. They're basically one step up above street gangs, and they would fucking like murder people and torture them and murder their families, right? That kind of thing. This guy, Motorola, was assassinated in 2016 by an anti-Russian neo-Nazi group, right? We'll talk about these guys in a minute. A neo-Nazi group called the Misanthropic Division of the Azov Battalion, right? We'll talk about these guys in a second. Anyway, but there are also rumors that he was actually killed, Motorola was actually killed by Russian intelligence, right? And you would think like, well, why would Russian intelligence want to kill one of the leaders of their own sort of paramilitary groups that they've been funding? And it was because they engaged in a purge of the leadership of the early anti-government movement. So they fund these guys, right? They fund these guys. These guys go out, they get all the troops, they get all the equipment, they train the people, shit like that. Then they kill off the leadership and take control of the groups. That's basically what happened, right? Because this guy Motorola wasn't the only one who was actually killed. There was another guy named Alexander Bednov who was shortly killed thereafter, right? He was also assassinated. The guy Motorola was killed in an elevator bombing. So just to kind of show you, it's not like they're trying to they're not taking things like collateral damage into account or anything like that. They're straight up killing civilians. They're killing like, people's families. They set a bomb off in this guy's building. They didn't give a shit if like other people were in the elevator with them. Apparently, this guy Motorola, his bodyguard, was also killed during this assassination attempt. So these are vicious fucking guys. This is not like, you know, this is bad shit, right? And yeah, so this other dude, Alexander Bednov, he's shortly killed thereafter. He was the leader of what was called the Batman Rapid Response Group, or the Batman Battalion, right? Very interesting name there. Couldn't find very much about that guy, but apparently he would also torture and murder prisoners. Um, Another guy named Alexei Mozgovy, right, was the leader of the Prizak Brigade. So Prizak means ghost, so the Ghost Brigade, right? He was also a Russian national and was a former cook in St. Petersburg, right? Then goes on to fucking form his own little terror cell. In 2014, he was the leader of what was termed the People's Court, which basically he would do shit like they would take things like convicted or not convicted but supposed rapists, thieves, things like that, and they would have their own sort of court and like sentence people to death, right? So that was his thing. He was sort of like like you ever see the Dark Knight Rises, and then like the Scarecrow is sort of like holding this sort of like mock court, right? You remember that scene from that movie? Kind of like that. He was doing shit like that, like basically taking accused criminals, accused rapists, accused people who were a part of the other factions and shit like that, and holding these sort of monkey trials where he would just have them executed, right? Apparently, after the execution of an accused rapist, he then sent out his people, his paramilitary group out on patrol, and told them that they should arrest any woman that he found sitting in a pub or cafe by themselves. This is a quote from Alexei Mozgovy. If tomorrow I see in a cafe, in a pub, even one young lady, she will be arrested. A woman should be the guardian of the hearth, the mother. And what kind of mothers do they become after pubs? A woman should stay in the house bathing, baking Przotsky. I guess that's some kind of dessert or some shit, bread or whatever. And only celebrate on the International Women's Day. It is time to remember that you are Russian. It is time to get your spirituality back. So there you go. These are the kind of people we're dealing with here, folks. That's the thing is that, remember a lot of people on the left defend these guys. A lot of people on the left defend, the anti-Ukrainian, pro-Russian, elements, because the first reason why is because they are fighting against neo-Nazis, or groups that have neo-Nazi, fighting against the government, which is supported by neo-Nazi groups. So that's the first thing, and I can understand that as someone who really hates Nazis myself, really despises fascists of all forms. I can understand the desire to want to side with the people who are fighting Nazis, right? But remember that it's not like these people are progressives either. They're not progressives. They're not liberal. They're not, they don't believe in freedom of speech or equal rights. They don't. They're also authoritarian. They're also very, very right-wing authoritarians in themselves. So there are no heroes in this conflict. Remember that, right? It's not like, these guys are clearly the good guys. No, 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 no. These are all assholes fighting each other, right? And so let's keep all that in mind. And we're mixed up in this shit because we're trying to keep the Russians out of Western Europe. That's the reason. We're not, supporting any of these people, ideologically at least, you know. Um, so the thing about this is that speaking of Ukrainian Nazis, you know, There are definitely some of these pro-Ukrainian government paramilitary groups which are filled with Nazis and white nationalists, white supremacists, shit like that, right? And some of these people have gotten aid in a roundabout way from the United States, right? So there's a group called the Azov Battalion, which is probably the biggest one. These guys also, there's a division called the Misanthropic Division. Those are the people that assassinated what's his name up here, fucking Motorola, that we were just talking about, right? The Azov Battalion was started by members of a football club, right? A soccer club, basically, fucking soccer hooligans, right? It's like this is like starts this group. Um, a couple of sources I saw called them a gang and not a football club, so we don't know, but the impression I'm getting is that they were like basically like fucking football hooligans. You see these people in like in the UK and shit like that, people that go out and start fights and get drunk after fucking football matches, Well, everywhere else in the world they call it football, but here we call it soccer for some dumb reason. I don't know why. I don't know why America can't just get with the fucking program already, you know. Seriously, what the fuck? Change it, call it football. Everybody else calls it football. Use the fucking metric system. Everybody else uses the fucking metric system. Why do we got to be different? Just make it, let's integrate with the rest of the fucking globe already. Anyway, rant over. But still, yeah, so this is what some sources are telling me that they were a street gang. Some sources are telling me that they were a football club. But anyway, they turned into this fucking neo-Nazi militia group that since they were fighting against the Russian groups, then the government starts supporting them, right? You get strange bedfellows in war. And this group, I mean, there were other ones too. There was one called the Right Front and a few others. This seems to be the biggest one, right? And so the government kind of like sort of makes them an official battalion, kind of sort of. It's a volunteer battalion, but then they start arming them. They start giving them uniforms. They start giving them weapons and training, shit like that. And it's pretty bad. And there's been a little bit of blowback from this, even here in this country. In 2015, four men were arrested in California who, four white supremacists, fucking like militia guys, were arrested in California who received training from this group, right? And apparently, this group is recruiting neo Nazis and you know other assorted white supremacist types from all over the world, from Britain, from Sweden, from Germany, the United States, um, also Brazil. And that kind of got me. I didn't know that there were neo Nazis in Brazil, but there are. There's kind of like a big neo Nazi movement in Brazil. That's kind of strange, you know. Brazil is actually very ethnically diverse. There are, for example, more black people in South America than there are in North America, right? Brazil has a very large, also a very large segment of white people, you know. So it's very, very ethnically diverse. Brazil is very similar to the United States in that regard. That they have lots of different, you know, people of different racial backgrounds all sort of living in the same society. Like you don't usually see that in most countries around the world. It's a very new phenomenon. Like say for example in most of Western Europe, it's a very new phenomenon to have people of different races coexisting. Only within the last couple of decades. Whereas here in the Western Hemisphere, it's been something that we've you know something that our societies have uh, you know evolved with, for better or worse. Right? Not always the best way, unfortunately, but you know. Anyway, moving on. Where was I? So yeah, so the accusation that you get from a lot of people is that, well, we're funding. neo-Nazis in the Ukraine, right? Is that true? Well, in a sense. In a sense, it is, right? Um, hang on a second. Another need to remove this other spam bot from the chat. There we go. So in a sense, yes, we're giving money to the Ukrainian government. We're giving arms to the Ukrainian government. Some of this money and arms are ending up in the hands of neo-Nazis, and that's just unfortunately the truth, Um, because once these things leave our hands, then we can't really control where it goes, right? And since these people are actually like part of the you know, the official Ukrainian military, unfortunately, that's just, you know, this is why war is bad. This is the same kind of thing why we end up funding parts of ISIS and shit like that, or why we were funding groups affiliated with Al Qaeda when they were fighting ISIS, that kind of thing. And I'm not making excuses for it. I'm just saying this is the reality. And war is a shitty business. Maybe this is why we shouldn't engage in it, right? So you can't get angry at anybody out there who's pissed at that, because there are a lot of people here in the progressive left in the United States that, you know, don't like that at all, and I totally understand. And for that reason, they tend to side on Putin's side of all of this. They tend to be a little more pro-Russia there because the way they see it is they see it as the Russians fighting white supremacists in the Ukraine. That's not exactly the truth. That's not exactly the truth. The Russians are not trying to liberate Ukraine from white supremacists. That's not the true at all. They're trying to take over the Ukraine for their own geopolitical reasons, you know, to expand their sphere of influence, shit like that. They don't give a fuck about like, white supremacists at all. Not really. Like, I mean, you got to remember also in Russia there are lots of white supremacists who are very much pro-government, very much pro Putin as well. So, it doesn't have much to do with that, right? Anyway, so yeah, in 2015, through an agreement known as the Minsk Protocols, the Minsk Accords, we already kind of talked about this. The then President Poroshenko negotiates a ceasefire with all of these factions, you know, and shit kind of, it sort of simmers down, although I don't think it ever really truly ended, from what I'm gathering. Right? Of course, I'm not an expert on any of this, so please, if I'm wrong, please correct me. Seems like though things kind of simmered down a little bit, and then this sets the stage for this current crisis where Putin has decided, okay, well, anyway, in 2019, a guy named Zelensky becomes the president of the Ukraine, and then they start making overtures to NATO, right? And apparently that is what has, this is sort of Putin's line in the sand, right? So you'll see people talking about Putin's perspective on all this, right? Because there are also a lot of people on the American left who basically are saying that NATO and United States imperialism is what's provoking this reaction from the Russians, from Putin, right? And yeah, maybe there's something to that. You could see that if you were to look at this from Putin's perspective, it looks like NATO is encroaching upon, attempting to surround the surround Russia, right? And there are other people that say that NATO basically reinvented itself after the fall of the Soviet Union, because there was no reason for it anymore, because the whole reason NATO existed was as a defensive thing against the Soviet Union, right? There are people that are saying that, well, this, NATO reinvented itself as an aggressive, organization, and now it exists to like, essentially the strategy is to paint Russia into a corner and dominate, Eastern Europe, right? I don't know. Who knows, one way or the other. I mean, it does kind of seem like Putin's the one that's making all of the aggressive moves there, right? The thing is that if a country like, let's say, Ukraine or Georgia or something like that, let's say they wanted to join NATO, right? Let's say they voted to join NATO. Should they not be allowed to join NATO? You know? Or they wanted to join the European Union. Should they not be allowed to? I mean, a country should have the ability to determine their own destiny without another country that happens to share a border with them butting in and using their army to force them to do what they say, right? Doesn't that seem right to you? Seems right to me. Seems like, hey, if I want to fucking join, if I'm the Ukraine and I want to join Western Europe instead of Eastern Europe, then Russia shouldn't have much say in that. In fact, Russia should be able to you should be able to say, piss up a fucking rope, right? So, kind of seems to me that Putin is the aggressor here, that he's the one using his military in order to force another country to do something that they don't want to do. That's that kind of is the definition of aggression, right? When you're using military force to enforce policy on a different country, seems like you're the aggressor there. So I don't know, but there are people on the American left who are just like, you know, basically like so incensed and so blinded by the fact that there's neo-Nazis in the Ukraine and shit that they're overlooking all this. So, what you gonna do, right? I'm not an expert. I don't know. Maybe somebody could enlighten me as to why I should be on Russia's side. There are also people on the American right who are basically saying that we should be on Russia's side. Right? So I've got a thing here from Tucker Carlson. Let me just open this up. Let's see here. Let me just cue all this up. But basically, Tucker Carlson came out on, oh man, fuck you. I've hit my article limit. God damn it. Oh well. I was going to play this video for you guys, but it looks like Daily Beast is not going to let me look at it. So I'll just put it down there for you guys there. There's a link to a Daily Beast article where essentially Tucker Carlson on his show on the 25th said we should be on Russia's side. And his case for it is essentially saying why. Why are we on the Ukraine side and why are we not on Russia's? And it's very funny how the right wing in this country is kind of like siding with Putin over all this stuff. Siding with the authoritarians is what it looks like to me, right? And there could be lots of different reasons why. I mean, the first reason I think is because they are trying to use this situation in order to make Joe Biden look bad, right? That's the first thing. Apparently, there's also here's another article here from Representative Tom Malinsky from New Jersey, who is saying that he has his constituents calling his office saying that, and Fox News viewers calling his office saying that we should be on Russia's side, that we should, basically step back and do nothing and allow Russia to take over the Ukraine. So, you know, I mean, I don't understand how easy it was you know, for Putin to kind of like subjugate the GOP in this regard. Is it because why? Like, why are they all suddenly fucking shilling for Putin, right? Why is Fox News and Tucker Carlson shilling for Putin so hard? Is it because what? Is it because Biden's the president? So they're trying to figure out, and they're just using it as a way to make, to score brownie points and take Biden down a peg. Is that why? Is it because they really do support Russia? Is it because Putin supported Donald Trump? I don't know. It's could be one of all those things. Is it because Putin is basically an authoritarian and they're allying with the authoritarians. Is that the reason? You know, I don't know. I think that bears some closer examination of to see what's going on, and why the right wing in this country is like throwing making such a big fucking stink over this. You know, something tells me that if we had a Republican president, they wouldn't be doing it. You know, a Republican president other than Trump, I guess. If it was Trump, I'm pretty sure they would be saying the same shit because I'm pretty sure Trump would be doing absolutely jack shit right now in order to stand up against Putin. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be enacting any kind of countermeasures, whatever. He wouldn't be sending money or troops or, trying to negotiate or supporting the opposition, or he probably wouldn't be doing any of that. As a matter of fact, he'd probably like, or sanctions. That's another thing we're doing. He most likely would be like palling it up with Putin, having him in the White House, talking to him, and then destroying the notes so that nobody could read it. That's actually a thing that happened, by the way. He hosted Putin in the Oval Office, kicked out his translator, and then destroyed the notes of what they said afterwards. Not a lie, not a conspiracy theory. That was our former president. Anyway, so let's just not forget. Let's just not forget. Regardless of what happens, I'm really hoping that this can be, diffused, right? Because, yeah, this most likely will not result in a nuclear war. Most likely will not result in the end of mankind, you know, especially since we've pretty much gotten a commitment from Biden saying that there will be no American troops in this, right? Doesn't mean that it will end. What's the next country going to be that Putin invades? You know, four countries or three countries in four instances over 20 years. Georgia, Czechia, the Ukraine, right? You know, oh shit, my laptop is not plugged in. I better plug it in. Right. You know, do you think that's going to be it? Do you think that's going to be the end of the story? Right. Somehow I don't think so. Right. I think if we don't do something to kind of stop him before it's too late, we're going to find ourselves in a situation very, in a reignited Cold War where Russia will be in a position to directly threaten members of NATO. Right now these former Soviet republics are sort of acting as a buffer in between, you know, that's another thing. In between, like, say, NATO countries like Poland or France or Germany, something like that, you have these Eastern European countries that sort of act like a buffer. And if say, there was going to be a war, a world war, and, Russia did want to invade Eastern Europe or Western Europe, they would have to go through these other countries first, right? And the thing is like, well, if all these other countries suddenly become part of Russia, that really makes it a lot easier for him to get first strike capability, at least with conventional forces. So that's another thing, you got to think about the long game. You know, maybe it takes 40 years for this to happen, and but I don't know. It's not a good thing. It's not, war is never a good thing, and let's just hope that they're able to diffuse all of this. Even though this is not going to end up being the big one. You know, it's never a good thing when bombs are dropping on people, right? Never a good thing, and it always has the potential to get out of control. So, anyway, folks, that's pretty much all I got. Also, yeah, let's also not forget Putin's a fucking asshole. You know, he's a complete asshole. He does shit like, he murders journalists. He jails his opposition. He's been president for what, fucking 24 years now, right? Like he's essentially like a fucking dictator, this guy Putin. So let's not forget that he's a piece of shit and he should be fucking fought against, right? He should be resisted against, because he's subjugating an entire fucking country. So let's not forget about that, folks. Who's the actual real fucking aggressor here? Right? So, anyhow, that's pretty much all I got. I read most of the comments already. Let's see. Fatman TV, hey, what's up? Why I hate the world? Because people like Brandon keep failing upwards. What? What are you talking about? What do you mean, like Brandon? What, like Biden? Is that what you mean? Mm. Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, we this is the world we live in. Where certain people have privilege and are able to, like, lose and fail, and people will still continue to love them and give them money. You know, and people will believe them no matter how hard they lose an election, for example, no matter how many times they get caught lying, right? No matter how of a shitty president they are. And I tried to keep that as vague as I could so that you could, apply that to anybody, right? That's unfortunately just, that's real life, right? Anyway, um, no, no, I don't know. Speaking of Joe Biden. I mean, I don't think the guy's a shitty president. I think he was dealt a very bad hand and is doing the best he can with a very, very polarized um, electorate. Let's not forget that, basically the day he took office, what, almost half of the people thought that he was illegitimate. Whether you believe that or not, which I don't believe that for a nanosecond, I, he definitely won the election, all that shit. Half the people already thought that he was a crook that stole it, and those are people that he's never really going to, ever sway to his side, right? Like, basically, Joe Biden could turn the president, he could turn, the United States into a paradise, and these people are still going to hate him. So that's the first thing that he's dealing with. Second thing is that he's dealing with, he has this giant pandemic, you know, everything that he tries to do in order to stop the pandemic gets reversed, right? Because there's not much a president can do to actually, unilaterally enact public health measures without Congress. So Congress doesn't want to do shit, right? Congress doesn't give a fuck. Congress ain't fucking, you know, gonna pass anything. So Biden goes and he does something like he does what he can, So what can he do? He enacts mask measures. Says, okay, well, you have to wear masks, you have to get vaccinated. Tries to enact a vaccination thing, saying that any company over a certain size has to have vaccinated, whatever, vax mandates. It gets overturned by the Supreme Court. Well, there's not much else he can really do. He can't, of course, they kept the one that he said, like, the government mandate is been kept, right? But Supreme Court overturns his mandate. So, well, what else is he going to do? He can't unilaterally spend money. The president's not allowed to do that. So the president can't be like, okay, well, here's $40 billion for public health measures, funding, whatever. That has to come from Congress. Congress ain't doing shit. The thing he can do is like a mask mandate or a vaccine mandate. That gets overturned, so he's basically screwed. So he can't really do much about that either. It's kind of fucked up. The one thing that he has managed to do somewhat okay is the economy seems to be recovering. How much is that is due to his policies is probably not very much. And to be honest, that's not enough. In the next election, everybody could have a job and it could be perfect, and inflation could be low and all that shit, right? And it's not enough. People are still going to blame him for, they're still going to say the economy's shitty because it's going to be polarized. So I think he's kind of been dealt a pretty bad hand. I'm pretty sure he's going to lose in the next election. I'm pretty sure Joe Biden's going to lose. Now, what it depends though. Are things going to get better between now and then? Is inflation going to go down? Is the pandemic going to end? Is the number of deaths going to stop? Just yesterday, over 2,000 people still died from the pandemic. So, but places around the country are getting rid of things like indoor mask mandates and shit. You know, is that going to work? Is it going to continue to go down? It's because basically they're saying the current spike is over with. They're saying that we got past the current hump. You know, and cases are starting to go down, and deaths are starting to go down. But still, when 2,000 people a day are still dying, the shit's not over. You know what I mean? So, is this gonna all be cleaned up, or are we still gonna be in the same mess? 3 years from now that we're in now, right? I think that's going to make a big determination over whether or not Joe Biden runs again or even is capable of winning. And then you also got to keep in fact in the mind that he's fucking, what is he, 70, 80 years old at this point? So he's going to be, what, 83? Is he going to be in enough physical shape to be able to win and even run again? Like, I don't know. I mean, Ronald Reagan was pretty fucking old when he ran for his second, you know, term. And I mean, he was like Alzheimer's and shit. Like it was obvious too. Like towards the end of Ronald Reagan's presidency, they like hid that shit pretty well. But no, he was suffering. So is that gonna? I mean, yeah, Joe Biden's showing a little bit of cognitive decline there. Is that going to be a factor also? Is Kamala Harris going to run? Right? Is Donald Trump going to run? I mean, fuck. I think if it's Trump versus Biden again, I think Biden wins. Right? I don't think things are so fucking bad like that Trump wins again, right? But I don't know. But if it's Trump versus Kamala Harris, I think Trump wins, right? If it's Trump versus, you know, Elizabeth Warren, Trump wins. Yeah, like I can't, I think Bernie Sanders would beat Trump, but is Bernie Sanders gonna run? He's fucking like 80 years old too. I mean, then again, Donald Trump's gonna be like what, fucking 79 and shit in 4 years. So I don't know. I maybe somebody else needs to show up and fucking, somebody else needs to emerge. There needs to be another front runner. Maybe it's time to get someone who isn't fucking on the verge of like doesn't have like one foot in the grave to be president. You know what I mean? Like, but who else can you think of? What, Pete Buttigieg? I mean, I can't even think of anybody else on the Democratic side that even has the name recognition. You know what I'm saying? So, well, see, there's plenty of people on the Republican side, plenty of people that would step up. If Trump, like, let's say, goes to prison, which is probably not going to happen, but or some shit like that, or let's say Donald Trump fucking, dies of a heart attack because he was like stuffing his face with like fucking, chicken McNuggets one day or something. Plenty of people on the Republican side, Ron DeSantis, most likely, fucking Ted Cruz. Plenty of people will step up on that side. Plenty of people with name recognition as well. So I'm thinking 2024 belongs to Republicans one way or the other. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, we can't read the future. Biden will have the hometown advantage, and I think and when the pandemic finally does end, that's going to be a big positive in his camp as well. When it finally does go down and we have like less than like fucking when we have like 5 or 10 people a day dying from the shit and not 2,000, and we can like end it and it stays ended, that's going to be like a big boon. The economy is going to go way the fuck up after that. Right? Because people are going to be out because there's a lot of suppressed demand for things. That's another thing. Like even now when people are pissed and they haven't been doing shit for 2 years, like there's a lot of demand. People want to go out. They want to go to Disneyland. They want to go to ball games. They want to go to concerts. They want to fucking go out to eat and not worry about dying. And places want to fucking hire people. That's the other thing. Places are begging to hire people, and they labor shortage and shit. So it's like, I think once all that shit starts going back to how it was, I think if that happens within the next couple of years, hopefully, I mean, shit, it's already been 2 years, but if it actually does, then I think maybe that might be a big plus in the Biden camp there. So we'll see. Who really knows, right? Let's see. Fat Man TV. No, bro, he's shifty and shitty. He keeps disrespecting the black community. You're talking about Biden. He keeps breaking promises. He would have more than enough support if he made America a paradise. Brandon could easily go on the campaign trail, going A to Z, and uh, wait. Oh, go to Arizona and Wyoming, roasting Mansion and Cinema. Um, is that or wait, what the fuck is it's not Wyoming. What's WV? what what is that is that Wisconsin? No, WV abbreviation. West Virginia, that's what that is. All right, fuck. I remember my 6th grade social studies when you're supposed to learn the I should know that, man. Fuck. Yeah, he could, you know. He's not doing that. And you're right. Yeah, Biden. I mean, Biden is not the best president. Obviously, I'm not saying that he's the best president ever. You know, I do think that he is a much better alternative than what we had. Let's not forget what life was like under Donald Trump, right? And what a shit show that was. So, but no, there's many other people I would rather see president than Joe Biden. Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, and I mean, fuck, throw a rock, you know, at the 2016 Democratic candidates, or even the 2020 Democratic candidates. Many of them would have done a much better job than Joe Biden. So I definitely agree with you there. Let's see. Fat Man TV. He is giving illegals, Afghanistanis, Asians reparations, but gives the people that got him into power nothing but useless symbolism and crack pipes. I don't know about that. No, he's not giving reparations to illegal aliens or Afghanistan, or no, that's not happening. You know, if anything, they're actually confiscating money from Afghanistan. They're not paying reparations to Afghanistan. That's not true. He's also not giving people crack pipes. I did a whole stream on that last Wednesday. This past Wednesday, I've got an entire stream about the whole Joe Biden crack pipe thing. That's not true. They're harm reduction programs, which are actually a very much a good thing in my opinion. In order to help people not catch, to stop the spread of HIV and shit like that. It's not like they're just sending out, they're airdropping fucking like boxes of crack pipes onto Chicago or something. That's not what's happening. It's money being provided to harm reduction programs so that people don't overdose, so that people don't spread hepatitis, HIV, shit like that. You know. So I think they're good. Genie B, Biden and Rump, Rump are the two oldest dudes to take office. Thanks for joining, by the way, Genie. Good to see you. You're absolutely correct that an old but out of touch man will always beat a younger, more capable woman around here because, dicks. Yes. Yes. That's bullshit. It's messed up. It's very, very messed up. I don't know. I think Elizabeth Warren could be a good president, you know. Kamala Harris, I don't know. There's some things about Kamala Harris that she played footsie with the law, basically the prison industrial complex a little bit. But I don't know. She also has some very progressive positions as well. You know, I don't like Kamala Harris's stance on legalizing marijuana. Put it that way. I really don't like. I think if she were to get on board with weed legalization, she'd be a much better. Uh, she'd score much higher in my book. You know, let's not forget like marijuana is still not legal at the federal level. You know, it's legal in a bunch of states, California, Colorado, Hawaii, a few others, but you know, it's still very much a gray area at the federal level, and it's allowing for things like I actually kind of touched on this a little bit last week too. It's allowing for things like police to come in and like seize the profits from like legal growers. You know, there was a story about this not that long ago about how in Santa Barbara County in California, um, the Santa Barbara sheriffs were basically seizing armored cars that had money in them, and the money was coming from weed repositories, right? So, you know, since it's still not legal at a federal level, then they were using that as a justification to basically just fucking steal this money. And the thing about it, it's civil asset forfeiture, so the cops can just take it, and in order to get it back, you have to sue them, and they could just say, well, this money was gained illegally, so it's ours now. And the actual police department ends up profiting from that, and that's true shit, and that actually happened. And I'm thinking of doing a stream on this because it's fucking like I talked little bit about this on Wednesday. It's fucking, in my opinion, like you know, one step above legalized fucking thievery. You know, cop can just take your money and you don't and not even charge you with the crime. You know, you don't even have to be charged with the crime. You don't have to be arrested. They could just fucking take it. That doesn't seem right to me. That's bullshit. So, um, yeah, pretty big. Yeah, just search for that. Search for if you want to read about it, Santa Barbara County legal civil asset forfeiture from fucking of money from marijuana growers. It's such fucking bullshit, you know. And that shit needs to stop. And the reason why they can get away with it is because the feds still have marijuana as a Schedule One drug or whatever. So anyway, guys, 1 o'clock. I got to get on out of here. Um, gotta go ahead and hit the road. But before I do that, as usual, we need to go through our ending speech and stuff. So let me see here. Let me just pull up all my stuff here. I really appreciate you guys all joining. You know, even all of you out there that don't agree with me or whatever, you're always welcome. You know, I am of course not always right about everything. You know, I am very much just a guy, and am often wrong about a lot of things. So I really appreciate it, and and I appreciate the opposing opinions as well because I am also not I am not correct always in my opinions also. Let me see here. Give me 1 second. I got that, got that. I got my SD shop. I got to bring that up. Um, oh wait, is it gonna make me? Okay, hang on. I'm just pulling up my end of pulling up all of my social medias and that kind of thing. UCD videos. There we go. Okay, guys. So thank you all for joining me. I really, really appreciate that. If you want to see more of my artwork, you can check me out here on my DeviantArt site. Let me just turn this on. Turn on my window here. This is my DeviantArt site that I have artwork and stuff on. So if you want to see more of my drawings and shit like that, here's one that I just did recently of this sort of barbarian rhino-looking dude. Been kind of into that kind of thing recently. Please forgive the fire sirens outside. Anyway, you can check me out there on DeviantArt. I also have a webcomic. This is hawanja.com, fun for the whole stupid family. So there's a link to that. It's got ninjas, it's got people getting kicked in the face, and lots of bad words in it, stuff like that. If you want to give me some money and support the show, I got an SD shop here. I sell stuff. These are like scrolls and prints and things, and I also have comic books on here, that kind of thing. This is one that we did during a stream. This is one of the old, one of the deep ones from Lovecraft. These are all handmade prints and shit. So if you want to support me, you can check me out there on my Etsy shop. And I also have another YouTube channel where I talk about toys and stuff, although I haven't made a video here in a couple of months, but I have some coming. It's because I'm getting ready to, I'm packing shit away because we're going to sell our house. That's why I haven't made any videos here, but coming soon. Please check me out there. Anyway, folks, that's what I got. Thank you guys for joining. Really appreciate that. Um, we may or may not be back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Not exactly sure, but for sure next week at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Please like and subscribe, all that. Really appreciate it. And you guys are great. Really appreciate you all for joining. So thank you, Jeannie B. Thank you, Fat Man TV. Really appreciate you joining too. And Lewis the Hedgehog, as always, great to see you. Uh, we have Sean Nillabud joined us. Thank you so much, man. You're great. And as well as Dynacat loves me. Always awesome to see you. You guys are the best. I am out of here.